Welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters. This channel is full of resources to help you thrive. And what if I told you that fitness matters as much as skill when you're trying to lower your anxiety? People don't think about this. They focus on the skills and then they fail. So stay tuned and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Okay, so in today's video, I want to talk about the difference between fitness and skill. Because a lot of the time, when people are trying to lower their anxiety and deal with stress more effectively, they reasonably focus on skills. In fact, a lot of what I do on this channel, a lot of what I do with my patients and my coaching clients is teach skills. However, my approach is also to coach people, to guide people to increase their brain fitness because you can rewire your brain in order to actually hack neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to change, in order to make your brain more fit, right? So let's think about this as analogous to physical fitness and performance, right? If you're going to learn how to ride a bike, you need to acquire the skill of riding a bike. And as long as you're going to ride the bike in low stakes environments where you don't actually have to physically perform in a very arduous, competitive way, you can just use all skill and just happily ride along down your trail. But what if you're a mountain biker and you're going to perform in a situation where you not only need skill, but you actually have to be physically fit in order to stay safe and get down the trail, right? In the second example, you need both the skills and you need physical fitness in order to perform well, right? Or what about juggling, which is a physical activity? One could acquire the skill to juggle some light balls and do it without much physical fitness, right? But consider this man who is juggling, but he's juggling a heavy kettlebell. If you were going to juggle a big kettlebell like that, you not only need skill, but you need fitness, right? If I tried that, I would injure myself, right? It would not be a good outcome. Or if you think about something like doing push-ups, push-ups requires fitness, but it doesn't require a lot of skill, right? So there's a difference between acquiring skills and a difference between fitness to perform those skills in certain circumstances. And some scenarios are such that as long as you're skilled, you're going to perform well and you're going to get a good outcome, right? Like juggling the light balls or riding a bike down an easy trail. Some situations, if you're fit and they don't take a lot of skill, then you can perform fine as well, like doing push-ups. However, some situations are like juggling the kettlebell, where you have to be both skilled and you have to be fit, or you're going to get a bad outcome, right? And when I think about why I see people not perform well with stress and anxiety, a lot of the time what I see is that they actually had acquired appropriate skills. They had the capacity to perform well, but they didn't get a good outcome because they didn't have sufficient fitness. And we leave this fitness effect behind too much of the time in psychology. And we think, well, if we just say the right thing, if we just learn the right thing, then everything's going to work out fine. And that's simply not true, right? This is part of a holdover in terms of the influence of Freudian psychology. Because in psychoanalysis, basically, if you had the right insight about something, everything fell into place, and then you were in Shangri-La because you were no longer blocked by whatever the lack of the insight might have been causing. That causes us to focus on skills and skill building and neglecting the fact that you actually have to be fit. And you can go through your world trying to choose situations that are easier, where your skills are sufficient and your fitness doesn't matter as much. But in fact, in the real world, we need to perform really, really well in a lot of situations, right? So if I have a conversation with you and I ask you, name the last 5 things that really stressed you out, situations that you had to cope with, somehow you had to respond, and you got really stressed out and you didn't like the outcome, right? So they ended poorly. I pretty much guarantee that at least 4 out of the 5 were situations where you actually had skills that were relevant. You may have been firing off the wisest choice in terms of the skills congruent with the situation and how you needed to perform, but you got a suboptimal outcome because you weren't fit enough, right? And one reason I think about this is, as you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, that I think about our brain structure and our brain chemistry when I think about what mediates our perceptions of a situation, our internal appraisal of that situation, and then the types of responses that we have to a situation, because it is our brain that is mediating all of that inner experience and those behavioral responses, right? We're not some amorphous energy being like on Star Trek or something, especially the first original Star Trek that had those things. We're embodied beings. And so when I am feeling tired, that's mediated by my body and my brain. When I am feeling enlivened, it's mediated by my body and my brain. If you ask me, John, what's your subjective stress level on a scale of 1 to 10? And I tell you, oh, I'm at a 3.5. Well, that is mediated by my body and my brain. And if I want to calm down and get to a 2, let's say, I might do that. But if you were looking at my brain activity, there's actual activity in different parts of my brain as I'm undergoing that state change from a 3.5 to a 2. And there are chemicals, the stress hormones, that are being fired off in my body when I'm having the stress response or the lack of it. And so all of that is a physical process. And so it is very appropriate to think about this as analogous to physical fitness, right? So the bad news is that a lot of us aren't as fit as we optimally should be in order to cope with the types of stressors that we're dealing with. All of us live stressful lives. All of us have anxiety. All of us have some level of stress. All of us deal with challenges on a daily basis. But the quality of the outcomes of our responses to those challenges is to large extent, mediated by how fit we are. Just like if you hand me a kettlebell and say, John, okay, start flipping that around and juggling it without injuring yourself. Can I do that with a really light one? Maybe. Can I do it with a heavy one like the guy in the video? Certainly not. And why do I automatically know that I can't do it with a big, heavy kettlebell like that? Because I am not fit enough, right? But people think, oh, I'm going to get into an argument with my partner and it's going to turn out well, or I'm going to run into this challenge with work stress and it's going to turn out well. Well, I'm going to rely wholly on just my skills, choosing the right way to react and reacting in such a finely tuned way that I get a good outcome. Okay, that's part of the equation, but are you fit enough to actually do it, right? I had this friend one time who had decided that she was going to go hike all the way up a mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, right? She was already pretty fit and able to do all sorts of competitive level things physically, but she knew that in order to be able to safely and successfully hike to the top of this mountain and back, she was going to have to train, right? So she, for several months, pushed herself harder than normal in order to increase her physical fitness so that when she arrived at the trek to go up and down the mountain, she was going to be fit enough to do it, right? We don't think this way about stress and anxiety and emotional regulation and dealing with life. We don't think about this way enough, which is why I'm making this video and sharing it with you, because we show up in certain moments having to pull off pretty complicated maneuvers in fairly heroic ways, right? We face all kinds of really profoundly challenging moments in our lives. You may have faced some of those recently. And we not only have to have the right type of response, but we have to have the capacity to do it, right? If the stakes are low and we don't care too much about performance, and performance doesn't really make the thing turn one way or the other, then it's fine. Like every year in my town, they have fundraising 5Ks where you can walk or run. It doesn't matter. Nobody really cares how fast you get through the 5K. Lots of people who aren't terribly fit show up to participate in the fundraiser, and they might just saunter slowly through the whole 5K and take as long as they want, right? But compare that to a guy I talked to a few days ago who said that he was going to go to a competitive 5K, and his goal was to finish in a relatively short amount of time, to be literally competitive and to not be the last person across the finish line, right? So what is he doing? Every day he's doing some cardio. He's doing power walking. He's riding his exercise bike at home. He's doing his Peloton. He wants to increase his physical fitness. And that's exactly what he needs to do in order to have a better performance once he gets to this competitive 5K. All right. So I want you to consider this, that in some of your moments, many of your moments, maybe a moment later today, your response is not only going to need to be the right type of response, but you're going to need to be able to perform it well in order to get an optimal outcome, right? So the bad news is most of us aren't as fit as we optimally should be in order to get better outcomes to lots of stressful situations, even though we may know lots of skills. The good news is that you can hack neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change. You can hack that to your benefit. And more good news is that you can actually get that increased brain fitness effect in literally just a few days, right? So let me pause for just a second and say that I offer a free ebook that teaches practices that do lend to this increased brain fitness. So if you want to go to courses.johnpeters.online/free stress ebook, you can download it for free. I'll put a link in the description below. But if you get that 32-page ebook, you're going to find that it gives you very easy to learn, easy to practice practices that if you do them in just a few minutes a day, 95% of my clients that I work with start to notice the brain fitness effect within a week to 10 days, right? Now, when I say notice the brain fitness effect, here's what I'm talking about. If you think about it as analogous to physical fitness, when we go to the gym and we start working out, we might feel it immediately in terms of, let's say, being sore. But in terms of noticing our increased ability to perform, it takes a few workouts to notice that. But eventually, if we do the right workouts the right way and we do them frequently enough and long enough, then what we start to notice is that, number one, we are more fit even when we're not at the gym, right? So we go to lift something, let's say, at home, and we're not working out. We're just lifting a table to move it down to the other end of the room or something. We notice that we're able to perform that physical activity with less effort, and it's less straining on us. And thus we notice, hey, I'm getting more fit, right? So we retain the fitness even when we're not practicing. And this is what we want to see when you increase your brain fitness so that you handle stress and anxiety better. We want you to see that you can actually perform better even when you're not performing. And this is important because I don't like to teach techniques that only work when you're practicing them. So, I mean, it's fine, for example, if you want to take a few deep breaths and calm down in order to go from an elevated stress state to a more calm state and benefit from that direct effect of the calming activity, it is fine to do that. And I do teach those techniques. However, wouldn't it be better that if you had this increased brain fitness and when you got triggered, your brain already was going to have a better response to that triggering situation, even without actual effort on your part to perform better. So that's what I'm talking about. And when I teach these techniques, the ones that you can learn in that free ebook if you want, and click the link below and download it. When people do that, usually in a week to 10 days, people come back to me and say, John, I am sleeping better. I am noticing that when I get triggered, I'm only getting like 70, 80, 90% is triggered by the same triggers, so I'm not spiking up as high. When I'm getting triggered, I'm actually coming back down and not staying up at that elevated stress for a long time. I'm resolving back down to my baseline more readily. And I'm not having as negative a dire tone of appraisal of situations as I used to. I'm able to see things as a mixed bag that I can cope with rather than a catastrophe, right? And I made a video recently on catastrophizing, by the way. If you want to take a look at that, I'll put a link up here. But less catastrophizing. So when I hear those things, I infer that the person actually is starting to get an increased brain fitness effect. And again, the good news is when people practice these things correctly and do a few minutes a day, people start to notice that increased brain fitness in literally a week to 10 days, right? So that's the good news. But the bad news is a lot of people don't seem to care about this. A lot of people think they want to just rely on skill. And that's a bad idea in my mind, because that's a setup for failure. And even a really skilled person without fitness is still going to fail, right? So I could learn the kettlebell juggling skill, but it's still true that if you give me that heavy one, like the fit guy in the video was juggling, I'm going to fail. There is a 100% chance I'm going to fail. And similarly, if I'm in a very triggering situation, it's very complex, the stakes are high, and I really need to perform well, if my brain isn't fit, I am not likely to get the outcome that I want, right? So I highly recommend that you download the free ebook in order to start practicing those types of techniques. But I will tell you, just if you want the short answer of what's the best technique on the planet, if I were going to try to get that kind of brain fitness, the number one best technique for the least amount of effort put in, the least amount of practice, and the quickest benefit of this type is mindful breathing, right? So I made a video about that, and I'll put a link up here to that. But if you only do just literally a few minutes of that per day, within 2 weeks, 100% chance you're going to get that brain fitness effect to the extent that you notice it in an unambiguous way, right? So if you like this kind of content, feel very free to hit the like button below. Feel free to comment, because I love getting feedback about the videos on this channel. Share it with a friend if you know somebody who might benefit from this video. And feel very free to subscribe to the channel if you want to be apprised of upcoming videos, because I publish videos at least once a week, usually more than once a week. So I'll see you in a future video.